Hi, Kate. Welcome to the Genetic Genius. I'm so excited to have you as a guest today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Lulu. It's great to be here.
Yay. We're going to have so much fun talking about how the body works today, and especially in regards to movement and nutrition, but with a focus on pain. But before we got dive deep into all of that, I'd love for you to talk about a little bit about yourself so the listeners can get to know you and hear your story, which I think is just wonderful.
Sure thing. So, I'm a Pilates instructor and a nutritionist, and have quite a few qualifications in different types of movement. So, gyrotonic is something that listeners might not be familiar with. And I also have a diploma in classical ballet as well. So, I spent a lot of my earlier years growing up dancing. So, my dream was to become a dancer, but unfortunately, at 16, I tore the meniscus in my knee. So I kind of knew at that point it was pretty much, that was the end for having
Mm-hmm.
any sort of big career in dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make a career shift. I was already at that stage planning, what I was going to do. Well, that kind of went out the window. So I ended up going to university and studying nutrition. And it was while I was there that I was teaching dancing, and my girlfriend said to me, you teach movement, you're into health and fitness. Why don't you go and do the Pilates course? And I was quite broken. So, besides tearing my knee meniscus, I'd torn my hamstrings, I'd done the ligaments in my ankle. I also had chronic SIJ pain, so
Mm-hmm.
pain in my lower back. So, I had a lot of pain and injuries. And I thought, okay, I've heard about this Pilates thing and I've heard it's meant to be good. I've done a little bit, but, let's go explore more. And so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I went off and I did the course and I kind of rehabbed my own body, so I can, gladly say today that I don't have any pain. And when I do, I just end up rehabbing myself. I know it's
Yeah.
amazing. When you have
Yeah.
those tools under your belt, it can make such a huge difference. So I ended up training and becoming a Pilates instructor. And then I was working in the nutrition field and sort of teaching Pilates on the side. And I gradually ended up transitioning into doing a bit of a both. So before we started this podcast, I mentioned that I worked in Europe for a year. So I again as a nutritionist and a Pilates instructor. So I taught in Switzerland and in Spain. And then I came back to Melbourne, Australia, and I opened my own Pilates studio. And that was nearly 12 years ago now. So my Pilates studio is all about health and wellness. So we have nutrition consults, we do wellness events. So we're going on a hike this weekend.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, it's going to be great. So it's autumn here. So we're going to, be amongst all the autumn leaves. But we really have a holistic view on health. So it's not just your movement, it's not just about what you're eating, but it's everything all together. So, last year with everything that happened in the world, we were in lockdown for a long time too. So that's when we launched our online membership, which again is all about health and movement and looking after ourselves really simply and easily, because it can be done. It seems very challenging because I think sometimes, we get so busy and we kind of forget that there's just these small little things that we can do that can really look after ourselves and help us keep us going. So, yeah, that's kind of how I've evolved to where I am now.
Wow, that's great. What a powerful story to be so young and to have this huge shift happen in your body and your whole mindset and your whole dream shifted of how you were going to end up.
Yeah, and it was because, I think back and I have photos of me in a tutu, and I'm standing in a shop with a food shop that my dad built me with all, the cardboard boxes behind me. So the food aspect was always there, but the
Mhm.
dance was winning through until, it really didn't become, the option.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had a love of food for a really early age. I did myself as well. Um,
Yeah, I'm definitely a food lover, that's for sure.
yeah, great. And so let's talk about the kind of the movement aspect first, and then we'll kind of dive into the nutrition and weave them back and forth. So you mentioned something earlier I'd love for you to talk about so I don't forget the gyrotonics. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's called the Gyrotonic expansion system.
Hmm.
That's a movement system that works with spirals. So we
Ooh.
do a lot of rotation, okay, flexion, extension, but we're rotating at the same time.
Mm.
That has its movement grounded in yoga. So, the developer or the inventor, Julio Horvath, he was an ex-dancer, had
Mm.
a great love of yoga and that as well, and wanted to really incorporate dance, yoga, rehab into a whole system that he felt included everything. So a big focus on breath and expansion of our breath, but also connecting to our core, as they know it. They refer to it as your seed center, okay, and really moving from our center in all directions.
Wow, that sounds so cool. I'd love to try that. It's not a machine. It's an act. Is it a machine that's in
You
combination?
can do it. You can do it combination. So there are classes where you can just do it sitting on a chair,
Hmm.
on the floor, or I've got a gyrotonic tower. So you can definitely do it using equipment as well.
Oh, fun. Well, I'll have to check that out on your website. So the aspect of what you do with movement, let's talk about the pain piece, because it sounds like that kind of like was your not Achilles heel, but it was your thorn in the side that kind of helped you to have a vision for how you wanted to help others. And so, how can pain limit our ability to move? I think that's a huge piece of what you do. And then also, kind of like what started your dream of helping people, and how did had that then again also help you appreciate like the ability to move in this pain-free world, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I think, growing up as a dancer, pain is kind of just part of the deal. You're on
Mm.
point all the time and your toes are killing you and you just keep going. You're kind of taught that you can keep going until you have a major injury. And then it's like,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to rest for a bit, but then how long can I get back into doing it? So pain was always something there growing up. And as I said, I had a lot of different injuries. So I went through a lot of rehab. And I guess I got a bit frustrated because between the ages of about 14 and 17, I had chronic back pain, like chronic.
Mhm.
For a teenager to have that sort of pain, it's not normal.
Yeah,
And
not
part of
fun.
that was because, yeah, no, and not as a dancer either, because,
Mhm.
your whole life is about performing. So when you're, doing classes 6 days a week and you're constantly in pain, it has a
Mhm.
flow on effect, not just into your movement, but into your mood, your mindset, just your energy levels. So that feeling of pain, which is what I see when I have clients come into my studio now, most of them often come in with some sort of pain. And you
Mhm.
can just see how it has just ebbed into every part of their life. So
Mhm.
pain is very intricate. It's one of those things that's really hard to separate it out. But I know from my own experiences, once I started Pilates and I started strengthening and connecting to my core, because that's another thing. You're a dancer, you kind of just expected to know, you can get your leg up to your ear and you can spin, but no one, not in my training, actually spoke to me about what my core was, where my strength was coming from, and sort of break it down into the muscular engagement. So when I sort of crossed over into the Pilates world, it was finally someone was telling me, oh, well, you have this pain because your deep lower abdominals aren't working so hard, and
Mhm.
your hip flexors are gripping because you're a dancer, and therefore that's contributing to some of the pain. So to
Right.
get that explanation and that anatomical understanding was very empowering.
Mhm.
And as a dancer, and knowing and feeling my body, having that connection to my body, then having that explanation kind of just completed the picture. And because I was able to rehab myself and I was able to get out of that pain, I just wanted to help other people, because when you come out of that, you just like I was sort of saying, your mood improves. You're just so much more motivated to do things. And knowing that, Pilates can be as easy or as hard as you want to make it for your individual client. So I
Mhm.
could strip the exercises right back and we could just start the first session focusing on their breathing. And
Mhm.
then next section, we're really just starting to connect to their core and doing really gentle movement that they're not scared to do. Because I think that's
Mhm.
another thing about pain. We start to get scared. We don't
Right.
want to hurt ourselves again or any further. So we
Mhm.
really restrict our movement. We stop doing, we stop bending forward or doing the activities that we love doing, and sort of being able to help people get back to that. So maybe it's been, bending down to pick up their grandchild, or it's been
Mhm.
getting back into running. Those sorts of things is really empowering to see that change within a person. So I think that's been some of the major changes and why it sort of led me on that path. having that experience with pain myself and then being able to help other people get out of that pain is just a very powerful thing.
Yeah, and it's so rewarding. Myself as a physician, I see a lot of people that have chronic pain, and it's very common. And when you can help them move out of that place of pain, it's just like this whole cloud is like lifted on their whole body, their whole mental health. I mean, it has, like you said, has so many ways that it interweaves into their lives, and it can be so disheartening, for to trying to get out of it. And I really appreciate that part of what you're doing, having that. And I've had some pain in my life, but I haven't had like a major, massive injury where it limited my ability to exercise and move, which I'm very thankful of. Knock, knock on wood. I've had some injuries with sports like skiing and running and things like that, but nothing major. But I know that it does totally change your focus. Like it's like you have this thought pattern that continually repeats, and you can't break it.
Yeah, and it is a cycle because if you're in pain, you don't want to move very much, and if you're not moving very much, then you're probably not motivated to eat as well, and if you're not eating as well, then you're not feeling good or sleeping as well, and so it really is this sort of pain cycle that they talk
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yeah, oh, it's so true. And so you talked about Pilates as being a way to kind of break that pain pattern or break that loop. And starting with the breath is so key. And so how, when someone's seeing you now online, it sounds like
Yeah.
are you doing all online? Are you doing any in the studio work now?
Yeah, so we are back. We were actually closed for 7.5 months last
Oh my
year with
gosh.
COVID. Our numbers are really low. So we have less than 10 people within our state that have COVID and are in quarantine. So everything is back up and open. So we have the studio
Yeah.
running and then we also have online stuff running as well.
Oh, that's great. That's good. So when you're seeing someone online or in person, what are those kind of steps that you do for the analysis aspect? Do you have a specific like regime, like program where people go into like, step by step, or is it evaluated like, and no, this would be better for you because of you have XYZ, like back pain, knee pain, ankle pain, something like that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. When we're in the studio, we get all of our clients to come in and do a one-on-one first. So
Hmm.
within that one-on-one session, we do a postural assessment. We, look at their gait, see how they move. We take a full history so that we get all their, health history, their injury history, and even just previous surgeries and whether or not they've got a family history of anything we need to be aware of. And then the first thing that we actually start teaching them is how to breathe and how to connect to your core.
Step one.
And yeah, exactly. Because, we're all, people are a bit like, oh, well, of course I know how to breathe. And I'm
Right.
like, yes, we all do know how to breathe essentially, but are we really maximizing and utilizing our breath to help relieve stress and to help get the
Mhm.
best movement out of our bodies? Because there's so much we can do with our breath. And I think it's kind of becoming more popular now. People are sort of learning about breath work, but that is one of the fundamentals of Pilates is just reconnecting to your breath. So we start with that first, and then we start learning about what our core is and what are
Mm.
the muscles that are involved in our core, because so many of us think that it's just our abdominals, but our pelvic floor muscles are a huge part of our core, and same with multifidus in our back, so postural
Mhm.
muscles. So it's not just simply about abs. So we kind of break that down, and then we start to gently move and see how people can move and what they're comfortable with doing. And
Mhm.
then we teach individually. So within our classes in the studio, we only ever have 4 people, and
Mhm.
each client is taught individually based on their postural assessment and their injuries and their goals. So it's a very tailored approach, which is a little bit different to some of the other sort of sports and studios out there where, group fitness, everybody does the same thing.
Mhm.
With our online membership, it's an extension of that, but obviously we don't have, that physical contact as such. So,
Right.
within our online membership, people come in and we have different workout videos. We have ones for beginners. We have ones very specific for injuries. So whether or not it's lower back pain or hip pain. So you can sort of choose if you've got injuries and break that down. But we also have monthly masterclasses. So I'm very big on educating my clients about
Mhm.
things that are going to help them. So, some of our masterclasses have been on, your thyroid and looking after your hormonal health, or maybe it's been on, we've done a towel release masterclass and how
Mm.
you can use a towel just to release and take tension out of the body. So,
Mm.
kind of a bit of a mix of everything. But
Mhm.
yeah, we've got healthy recipes and stuff in that too, because, our diet and our lifestyle are just such a big thing of our health as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love it that, it's so key to have that kind of like introduction, and breath is, like you said, so important for the healing, also for the tissues. The body needs to have oxygen, and we're in that, stress state as a lot of people have been lately.
Yeah.
Their breath totally changes when they're in that sympathetic mode, just like they don't even realize it because they get into that pattern, just like we were talking about before. So you were talking about the body awareness piece, which I guess is part of that breath. So with Pilates, it sounds like that you're really teaching people to be aware of not only their breath, but other parts of their body, which it seems like so many people are disconnected from, especially when you have an accident, right? Like from that pain, it's like you only think about the pain. And how do you reconnect people with their actual body parts, their actual human existence?
Yeah, it seems strange, doesn't it, to talk about that? But I think, a lot of people nowadays, we're sitting down for a lot of the day. You sort of get up, do get ready, morning routine, and then you sit for 8 hours. So that
Mhm.
connection to the body is lost there. Plus, we're so engrossed in the work that we're doing. So we're not thinking about our posture or our
Mm,
breath or, our positioning. So things like that, just getting people to become more aware of when they're sitting,
mhm,
posturally, are they sitting in the center of their sit bones, or are they leaning forward or hitching one shoulder? So, we sort of teach people depending on what their day job is.
mm.
If I have someone that comes in and they work with kids all day and they do a lot of bending and twisting and lifting, I watch them. I watch their movement and I sort of say to them, this is what I want you to be aware of when you're doing those movements. Or if someone has a position that they have a lot of pain in, maybe it's sitting, then, I will teach them how they should be sitting correctly to reduce pain. So bringing that awareness to their body positioning and that breath is a big thing. But then also while they're moving, just being really present in their movement.
Mm.
So many times, we can go in and do a gym class and we're thinking about what shopping we've got to get after the gym class and, what appointments we've got coming up.
Mhm.
In Pilates, because we're so focused on making sure that we're breathing well, that we're engaging our core, that we're focusing on the movement that your instructor is telling you, you just don't have the time to let your mind wander. So
Mhm.
having just that present time in your body is a big thing, and really helps to be and learn to become connected to your body as well.
That's wonderful. It's so important to have that body awareness, especially when in that rehab stage, when you are moving through, pain doesn't have just the physical piece, it has the mental and the emotional piece. And it has to be that whole like retraining and moving through the body and being able to have awareness of what's working, what's not working, and how the move each piece of the body, like a puzzle piece, is connected to the other point.
Exactly. So I will have somebody come in and be like, "Oh, my lower back is really sore." And I'll be like, "Okay, yep, I can see, I understand that. But let's look at your posture." And they might be standing and, one side of their shoulder is right up towards their ear. And
Mhm.
so we start teaching them to release that tension out of that shoulder, because they might not even be aware of it, that when they're breathing, they're lifting their shoulders. So once we sort of start bringing attention to that awareness in that one point, we often see a flow on effect through the body, and lower back pain may decrease just by releasing tension in the shoulder. So it
Mm.
really all is interconnected. And sometimes you just need that sort of outside set of eyes just to highlight things for you, because it's not something that you're aware of.
Right. Most people don't look in the mirror every morning and see like, oh, which part of my body is out out of shape or out of alignment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm looking for all the
Right.
time. My
Yeah.
husband can't get away with anything.
I'm sure he loves that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
not so much, but he knows it's beneficial. So,
So you were talking about too about the sitting, and I know that a lot of people have been sitting much more than they used to, probably with their new shift of working at home. And have you created some special videos on your website that can gear towards that particular aspect, moving when you're at home and needing to move the body during breaks of in between your long sessions of work?
Yeah, I have actually. So within our membership, we've got a seated movement workout. So it goes through that, it's just 10 minutes. So if you're sitting at your desk during the day, at lunchtime, you can just add in these movements and stretches just to get moving. And then if you check out my Instagram and that, I've popped up some desk stretches, when you're sitting at your desk, and just some easy exercises, because that's the thing, throughout the day, we're often really busy and we just think,
Mhm.
oh, I just don't have time to do a half an hour workout or whatever it may be. But we can all just take 2 to 3 minutes, here and there, especially if we're, waiting for our coffee just to be made, or whatever it is. We can always find just those couple of minutes just to add in a few of those things. Dr. Stephen Gundry calls them exercise snacking, and it's a really good way
I
to
love
look
that.
at it, because it's
Yeah.
just these little bite-sized bits of movement that can really add up in your day.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I have to set a little alarm on my computer to go off because I just get so focused sometimes. I'm like, wow, it's been like 3 hours, I'm just so engrossed in writing something or working with a patient, etc. So that's great. I love that exercise snacking.
Yeah, it's a good way to sort of look at it and add it in. But
Totally.
exactly, we can get so engrossed in something, and then
Hmm.
it's only when we finish that we go, oh, my neck is so
Hmm.
sore. Obviously, my posture changed while I was sitting at the computer. So an
Hmm.
alarm is a great thing. Quite a few of my clients will set up a little, it's like a flash of the screen on their computer. So that's just their
Hmm.
reminder as a bit of a posture check in as well. So just those small little things can definitely help.
Oh, yeah, totally. And one of the things I know that you're passionate about is working with women. And do you have specific exercises that are kind of like geared towards women more as we age? Because our body changes, the cellular structure changes, but especially our joint movement and our actual bone structure changes because of hormonal changes. And so, how do you look at that from your perspective?
So, yes, for sure. I work with a lot of women that are either sort of perimenopause or in menopause or post-menopause. So we do a lot of work with bone health and making
Mm,
sure that, and joint health as well. And part of that comes from obviously doing great movement that's not putting too much stress on the joints. So things
mm,
like Pilates, where we're really strengthening our muscles and strengthening our musculoskeletal system to support our joints without loading them too much. Because
mm.
things like running and, those high impact activities as we get older aren't fantastic for our joints. So when we look
Mhm,
at that sort of movement aspect and talk about great forms of movement like Pilates and swimming and walking, because
mm,
bone strength is really important. But then we also talk about nutrition as well. So,
mm,
diet wise, making sure that we are getting enough vitamin D and calcium for our bone
mhm,
strength. So, there we do a little bit of a combination, but it is, I'd say, one of those areas that I think, because of the age we're in now, I often see a lot of older women with osteoporosis and osteopenia,
mhm.
and they sort of think dairy's they've just got to drink, drink
A
more
gallon of
milk and eat
milk,
more
right?
cheese, and they,
Yeah.
yeah, and they'll be fine. But, research has changed so much, and we
Yeah.
know that, we can get way more calcium from our green leafy veggies and,
Yeah.
nuts and seeds rather than
Mm,
our dairy. And we also know that movement and bone strengthening, so really adding in that resistance work, so whether
mhm,
or not it's with weights or with springs like we do in Pilates,
mm.
that's really super important to help them as we age.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a huge kind of part of my clientele or patient niche, I guess you could say, is women in that same age group. And I think, a lot of women, and when we become in that age group, we're looking for different ways to better ourselves and to have this wonderful aspects of aging in a beautiful way. And I think that the mind frame is also changing of that too, because, oh, this is only happening to you because you're X amount of years old, and it's never going to change because you're old now. like, wait a minute, who decided that that
No.
was the way it was going to be? Because I do not like that mindset at all. And so I think that, as we become more aware of our body and the things we can do, like you're saying with movement and Pilates and these different things like strength training, it really allows that body awareness for us to age gracefully and beautifully.
Exactly. And we are living so much older now too. So
Right.
do you know what I mean? Like we really need to look after ourselves, and that might be some changes. So I'll often have women come in, and maybe, with bringing up their kids and stuff, they didn't have a lot of time. So they will say to
Mm,
me, look, Kate, I haven't exercised for 20 years.
mm,
I'm a bit scared in starting. I'm a bit out of shape. I'm worried about, starting to move again. And so it's really meeting them where they're at and just sort of saying, we can start gently. There are great
mhm.
forms, just start adding in a walk. Everybody can do that. It's quite an easy thing to add in that doesn't cost a lot of money. And then if we're looking at things like Pilates, we can add in light weights to begin with, and we can really just move gently.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. And it is so key for many women who have been and men too, who've been raising the family. It's like some things go out the window. And of course, that's not true with everyone. But I think I've seen a shift happen in the newer kind of younger generation where they're spending a lot more time outside and exercising with their kids and being much more active. So I think maybe there was a change in the, I don't know what that would be in the 50s and 60s. Maybe it would be in that time area where it was just like work, 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 work. And they didn't have time to take care of themselves. But I think that mindset's changing too, which is good.
Yeah, and I'm definitely seeing that too with a lot of my younger clients and people joining my membership. A lot of them are mums, maybe
Hmm.
they are short on time, but I think we've got things like the internet, and we've got these online memberships where you can get really great guidance and instructions to work out from home, which
Right.
previous generations, they just didn't have that access
Right.
to that.
Jane Fonda
So
workout.
yeah, that's it. So,
Right.
there definitely has been a change over the years, and I think it's a great one.
Me too. Okay. So let's switch kind of our gears and talk about food and nutrition because I love it and you love it. So it's a great combination for that, of course. So as we're talking about women, let's start there. I think that's a great in that female focus. So you mentioned a few things, and are there specific food groups that can help? Well, let's back up a little bit. How do you kind of interweave nutrition and the Pilates within you spoke about a little bit about with your programs or with your clients? How is that like when you're doing that analysis stage? Are you looking at also doing a food analysis and seeing what they're eating and what is going on with their body and the pain to kind of see how those two together can then best serve them?
Yeah, so when people are coming to the studios, we'll find out if they have any allergies. We'll check where they're feeling that pain. We'll ask how often they feel that pain, what times a day they're feeling that pain. So we can work out whether or not it might be after a meal. Okay, it could be first thing when you wake up in the morning and you know that you're stiff. So we look for, I guess, commonalities and if there's anything that's reoccurring. And then it's getting just to know people as well, just finding out what their jobs are, what their
Hmm.
sort of daily, exposure to environment and food and that is. And we kind of go through that. To delve in a lot deeper, I'll do like individual nutrition consults with my clients, or we'll run
Hmm.
workshops and things. So we've run one on bone health and aging and stuff
Hmm.
like that. And then within the membership, again, as I sort of said before, we'll do master classes. We've
Hmm.
done one on weight loss, but weight loss with looking at our balance of our body, not necessarily believing that, if we eat X, and then we do Y, then we should be this amount of weight, because it doesn't
Right.
always work like that.
No, it doesn't.
As you know, it's
Right.
very multifaceted. So that's why within the membership, we want to give everybody as much information as they can, because I think a lot of women sort of, they really do go, I don't eat a lot, I exercise a lot, and I'm just not losing weight. And that's
Right.
something that I hear a lot, that I eat really well and I do exercise, but nothing seems to be shifting. And
Mhm.
that's when we have to delve a little bit deeper and maybe look
Mm.
at what's happening with their hormones, when I'm working with somebody one-on-one, I'll obviously get them to do a blood panel so I can see where their levels are at, and
Mhm.
really do a deep dive into some of those nutrients, because there could be nutrient deficiencies there that they're not
Mhm.
aware of.
Right. Yeah, totally. And I think it's really key too that you said, it's everybody's individualized. That's when it comes to weight loss programs, which can be really disheartening for people who have, like you said, it's like they do everything, eat right, exercise. They feel like they eat all the great foods and then nothing shifts. And then, like you said, we have to dive deeper because there's obviously something happening at the cellular level, which is not quite working right.
Exactly. And sometimes that does take a bit of investigating. Like sometimes it takes a bit of time. And I think too, people will make a change and they'll often say to me, okay, well, how long until I see the results of this? And I'm
Right.
like, well, again, how long is a piece of string? Everyone's a little bit different. It might be a couple of months, it might be, a week or two, or it might be a longer journey. If someone's obviously had, a lot of stress and their body's had a lot of inflammation over a
Mm.
long period of time, then it's going to take a lot longer to sort of unravel all that as well.
Yeah, as the cortisol levels are so increased, it can be challenging for that weight to come off sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe they've, come to that sort of point of burnout, and unfortunately
Mm.
there's an autoimmune condition, so maybe that's,
Right.
your thyroid or
Mm.
something like that. So then again, that's going to take a lot longer too to get that back under control.
Right. Yeah. And everybody has their own pace of healing,
Yeah.
which is important for them. And do you have an aspect of eating disorders that you analyze, or do you see that and can you help people as they're coming in with that? Because I think I see that a lot in my practice with it when we're talking about the weight loss specifically, where someone has been trying, and then they have some kind of eating disorder in the background. Do you work with that, or did you have training in that when you were in school?
Yeah, so unfortunately, being a dancer myself, I suffered a lot with body
Mm,
dysmorphia, and I
mm,
did a lot of restricted eating myself. So I
mm-hmm,
have a lot of personal experience with that. And it took for me a lot of changes through my mindset. Okay, a lot
mm,
of support, having a great support network. And
mm-hmm,
I do see that come through, especially with more of my younger generation nowadays, especially I think with all the exposure, whether or not it might be social media and everything that's out there, that
mm-hmm,
that has a big effect on our mental health and wellness and
mm-hmm.
expectations of our body as well. So yes, I definitely see that come through. And again, I usually work with other practitioners in that area. So,
Mm-hmm.
it might be a counselor, okay,
Mm-hmm.
or a often I will get somebody that's already come through to me from the hospital system. So they have a support network that way as well. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it's quite multifaceted, and that's something that's not easy to work with, because it's very easy to say, okay, well, you just need to eat more food. But
Right.
the mental aspect of that condition is a very tricky one to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Oh
I think
yeah.
again, it's very individualized, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody has a different length in their path.
Right. And it can have that huge emotional component. And like you said, with counseling can be very key. I was just curious about your training or working with patients with it, because I do see it commonly in the clinic. Okay, let's go back and talk about women because I asked a question there and then I got distracted myself. Okay, so do you have specific aspects, and you say a woman who's perimenopausal, we'll just pick that because that's kind of a common theme I think for our listeners, and then also you work with that as well. And do you have specific food plans or food groups that will really target those specific women and help them to move through in that stage, because it can be a really kind of tricky stage to navigate?
Yeah, I was going to say yes and no to that question, because again, it is really individualized.
Hmm.
But we like to go back to our whole foods diet. So
Oh,
obviously
nice.
trying to increase our fruit and vegetable intake, our vegetable intake especially, and then, nuts and seeds, grains if they can tolerate them, but
Hmm.
often there's underlying things that go through there. I'm not somebody that will automatically eliminate things straight away until I've
Hmm.
got all the information. So
Right.
I definitely think for some women, going off gluten and going off dairy is very beneficial, but it depends on the person and it depends kind of what they come
Hmm.
in with. But
Right.
we definitely focus on obviously getting omega 3s and getting good
Hmm.
fats in our diet to really support our hormones. And so we will definitely go through that, and then just different individualized minerals, vitamins and minerals that they may
Hmm.
deficient in, depending on what's come back with their blood work as well.
Hmm. And so, do you do a mineral panel, a macronutrient and vitamin panel?
Yes, so we check that all out as well,
Hmm.
and then it just gives you that better understanding. Do you know what I mean? You just really diving that bit deeper with them. So yeah, I think that's really crucial. And I sort of had the belief with diets, like I'm very much for balance. I
Hmm.
don't want people to come in and feel that they're restricted and, they can't have that piece of dark chocolate that they would like,
Right.
everything in balance,
Hmm.
and, eliminating things where we need to, and potentially, for a short period of time so that we can see its effects, and then,
Hmm.
gradually reintroducing it if it's appropriate for the person.
Yeah, totally. I have the same philosophy. I think if when patients are too restricted, is they don't feel happy. And why would you want to be doing something if it's not making you happy? Like, like I'm like, if you're gonna go to a party and go out with your friends or something, choose wisely, but also treat yourself and have some fun, because that can be 100% more rewarding than, well, I went to the party and I couldn't eat anything. I was miserable.
Yeah, and I think that's what puts people off, and that's the whole dieting aspect that comes through. It's that restrictiveness, and we all know your willpower only lasts for so long with that stuff. And
Right.
then rather than just being like, I'll just treat myself and then start eating, healthy again the next day, it's like, it's all done. It's too much. I'm just going
Right.
to give it all up in one go. So
Yeah.
I think that really helps with people. It's changing your whole, I guess, view on lifestyle, that we really want to adapt and have a healthy lifestyle. And a
Mhm.
healthy lifestyle includes balance. So, going back to that 80-20 rule and enjoying food, because it is there to be enjoyed. It's like you said, it's just trying to choose wisely when you can.
Yeah, exactly. I know one of the first things that patients always ask me when, of course, I know I'm going to be working with their diet, nutrition, and am I going to have to give up coffee? I'm like, okay, no, let's just like evaluate everything. That's always the first question. I'm like, I would never turn someone off of coffee, but let's see how much you're drinking. you know, I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing will often come through with alcohol. Like,
right,
do I have to give up all my alcohol? And I'm
right.
like, well, let's just have a look. Same as you. We'll have a look, see how
Yeah,
much your intake is, and
exactly.
what choices you're making around that. Because even with alcohol, there are some choices that are better than others as well.
Right. And sometimes it's easy to overdo it. Like I think you were saying that too, like when you're wanting to eat healthy and then you have this like falling off the wagon, or it's like you can't see that what you're eating is really detrimental. You don't unless somebody else looks at it with a different pair of eyes.
Exactly. So getting that outside sort of, view of looking in. And then I think it's just again, just getting that little bit of education as well, that
Mhm.
that health can be simple. If we're going back to choosing, just whole foods and vegetables and, nuts and seeds and lean sources of protein, that sort of it's not too complicated. It's almost like the less complicated the food, the better it is probably going to be for you anyway.
Right. Where it doesn't have a recipe with like 80 ingredients. That always makes me want to cry.
Yeah, I like, who wants to spend an hour and a half prepping a meal, and who has the time? Like, most people wouldn't find that enjoyable, and most people
Mhm.
wouldn't find that they can fit that into their lifestyle anyway. So just making it as simple as possible for you is the main point.
Right. Yeah. And you focus a lot with that with your practice, right? Helping people to be able to make easy, healthy, simple meals in a way that provides them the nutrients, but it also gives them more space for to live their life.
Exactly, because you can get a restaurant, I mean, a recipe, and you can see it on social media, and it'll say, okay, well, you need Himalayan sea salt and you need, all these ingredients that people are like, I don't have that in my pantry. I
Right.
just don't have all those things. So,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's great to experiment, but on an everyday basis, we just want to make something that we know is going to be really delicious,
Mm-hmm.
nourishing, but also that's easy to throw together.
That's great. And you include that in your membership. Do you have recipes that are given out monthly to the members?
Yes, so we've got about 100 or so recipes in there already, and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of range. They've all been I've developed them all, so a lot of them are just the ones that I serve my family, from a week to week basis, and they range from sort of breakfast, lunches, and dinners to snacks and desserts. Because again, everybody still wants to enjoy, something sweet or whatever. And again, the recipes are really focused on whole foods, nourishing foods that are really going to look after your body, but
Mm-hmm.
not depriving you in any way.
Love it. And do you have those in a book?
Recipe ebook. So one of like my freebies on my website is a recipe ebook. My husband has actually started putting all the recipes together because he's like, "Do you realize how many you have?" And I said, "Oh no, not really." Because yeah, each month new ones come out
Yeah.
for the membership. So yeah, there's at least 3 or 4 that come out every month. So yeah, I'm
Nice.
sure I will have quite a few amounted into
Yeah,
short
you should
time.
totally have a book. That would be great. I could see that. And combining the movement with the recipes in your book would be super fun.
Maybe that's another project to put on my list.
Right. Yes, the projects that always add up. Okay, let's talk about some lifestyle changes because I know that's kind of a piece of what you help your clients with. And so, can you just give some, let's say, maybe three, 3 to 5 of your favorite kind of like sustainable, healthy habits so that people could really start something that's easy that they could start getting into their daily life right away to help to see a change happen?
Sure. Well, I guess one of the main ones, and I know everybody's heard this one before, that it's drinking more water.
Drinking
So,
water. Right.
drinking water,
It's
you
true.
keep hearing it from all these health professionals, but it's really true. So, generally we wake up in a dehydrated state in the morning
Mhm.
because we've gone, at least for most people, about 8 hours without having anything to drink. We've been breathing overnight, respiration. So we wake up in that dehydrated state. So if we're the first thing we can do in the morning is just hydrate, okay, just a glass of water. If you want to be fancy, add a bit of pinch of a salt, okay, so you can balance up your electrolytes. But
Mhm.
just start hydrating first thing in the morning. It's really going to help. And a lot of people will sort of say to me, "Oh, I'll get up and I'll drink 3 big glasses of water, and then I don't need to drink anything till after lunch." And I sort of say, it's great that you're drinking water, but just try to sip it throughout the day. So we're
Mhm.
really going to get the most benefits if we can just have a little bit, but sort of almost drip feed our body with that water throughout the day.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
having a drink bottle, okay, at your work desk, or I've got a few clients now with the smart watches. You can tap every time that you have a glass of water, so it
Yeah.
adds up over the day how many
Yeah,
glasses you've had.
that's great.
So
Mhm.
things like that can help just with tracking
Mhm.
the fun stuff. Movement wise, I just ask my clients to not avoid movement. And what I mean by that is if you need to bend down and pick things up, then do it. Don't be like, "Oh, I'll get that later and I'll just avoid doing it." Or, if you can't find a car park that's close to the supermarket, well, that's fine. Park the car and walk, because any
Mhm.
little, extra couple of minutes of that exercise is really going to add up.
Mhm.
And a lot of the studies are sort of showing now that our exercise doesn't need to be in one chunk. It doesn't need to be
Right.
1 hour block. All those little things you do throughout the day really add
Mm.
up. So
Mhm.
just really trying to incorporate those sort of incidental exercise movements throughout your day can really make a big difference and help prevent pain. Because
Mhm.
it's when we're avoiding these movements, "Oh, that's a bit too high, we don't want to reach for that," or "That's a bit too low, we don't want to bend for that." That's
Mm.
when we start to restrict our movements. We're
Mhm.
not getting that fascial movement through our body, and that's when we tend to get pain or injuries arise. So
Yeah.
that's probably my second one. And then my third one is eat more vegetables. Just
Love it.
really strip it back. Like,
Yeah.
your plate, ideally, if you're looking at your dinner plate, we want to have half that plate of
Mm.
veggies.
Yeah.
And we just want to get as many different colors into our bodies as we can. So
Mhm.
nothing too hard. Just make sure that you're buying and then eating those veggies.
Oh, yeah, those are great, Kate. I love it. It's the simple foundations that make such a huge difference in our health. I mean, just doing those three things, people would see amazing results.
Yeah, and I think that's what we sort of, my whole philosophy is trying to make health and movement really simple.
Mhm.
Those sorts of things, they're not hard to do. And, if we can just focus on those easy things, we will really see big changes in our movement, in our mood, okay, in our weight, all those sorts of things really do sort of add up.
Yeah, totally. That's great. Okay, I love it. One last question as we're going to wrap up today, and then we'll hit some of your highlights about how everyone can find you, follow you, all that good stuff. So, if you had an unlimited budget right now, what would you do to make the biggest impact on the planet?
Oh, that's a really tough question. Because there's so
That's the
many things
hardest
that
one,
I
right?
would yeah, because there's so many things that I would love to do, but honestly, I think when it comes back to nutrition and looking after ourselves, it would be going to the higher levels of government, and it would be looking at our food system and trying to get rid of the chemicals that are in our foods, and
Mm,
and really, because there are so many things that are in our food that shouldn't
mhm,
be in there.
mhm.
So going back to food policy, changing food policies that would then have a flow on effect to what goes into the food. I'm going to say that as one of them because there could be so many different ways. But
Mhm.
I think if we could relook at what goes into our food, additives, preservatives, chemicals that really shouldn't be in there, then that would have a big flow on effect to what people are putting into their bodies and how they're performing as well. So,
Mm.
yeah, let's go with that one today. But that's something that I
Yeah.
could probably pick 50 different things to do.
Right, every day you can pick a new one. But no, that's
Yeah.
great. I love it. If we could have that change, it would be huge for the whole world, especially very impactful. And I think we're moving into that global appreciation, especially I think COVID had a lot of pluses. I try to think about the positive aspects, and I think it has created a much more global aspect of things because we've been working together. And I think that the food and what we eat, if we can make that a global awareness, how huge it could make on the planet, it would just be unbelievable.
Exactly. And like I sort of said, that would then have that sort of flow on effect that, if those things aren't in our foods and if we're sort of made aware of how bad they are, then that's that sort of education aspect that would flow on to, the next generation and that as well.
Yeah, totally. Okay, Kate, how can people find you on your website and follow you and find out about your amazing membership, which I can't wait to sign up and check out.
They can check out my website and membership at mindmovementhealth.com.au. And then I'm on IG, on Instagram and Facebook at Mind Movement Health also.
Great, super easy. And I'll put all those in the show notes so everyone will be able to find them so fast. Well, thank you, Kate.
Amazing.
It's been a joy to have you on this show today. Thanks for taking the time and telling us all about fun ways to move our body and be healthy.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been great fun.